dystopia genre is one of storytelling's establishing foundations, as some of the earliest films like Metropolis take place within it. Modern society has been, it seems, throughout the 20th and 21st century, obsessed with the portrayal of our great cities' governments and societies falling to the ground. The genre first starting with the concept of a utopia, an ideal society for all to live harmoniously within. The first concept, named by Sir Thomas More within his 1516 book Utopia, however, immediately as many possessed serious reservations about the existence of utopias. The word itself deriving from what could be viewed as a pun, coming from the Greek word utopos, no place, and also eutopos, good place. This implying that such a good place with no hardship was more or less unachievable. And thus, a utopia is a place that is too good to exist. A dystopia is a place we suddenly don't want to exist. Today we define dystopia as an imagined place or state in which everybody is unpleasant or bad, typically in a totalitarian or environmentally degraded one. The first public usage goes all the way back to John Stuart Mill in 1868. Used in his speech to the House of Commons, where Mill said, "It is perhaps too complimentary to call them utopians. They ought rather be called dystopians." However, it wasn't until about 50 years afterwards when authors made the word their own, enlisting it as one of their own texts, where the idea of the dystopia began to actually take root in the public consciousness. Finally, coming to fruition as a commonly known concept in the form of the modern dystopian novel, around the turn of the 20th century. A time of political unrest, particularly within Europe, and general global anxiety, with 2 world wars awaiting in the near future. Jack London's 1908 novel Iron Heel is looked back upon as one of the most remarkable prophecies of the impending international tensions that would give way to World War I. Yet, we don't see dystopian fiction becoming more defined as a genre until the publication of Yevgeny Zamyatin's Slender We in 1921. Before We, fiction about the ideal society, with the exception of H.G. Wells and Jack London's work, tended to end utopian. After We, the genre took a grim downturn, with some of its first to suggest no happy ending for the plagues of its characters. We set up many tropes that would dominate dystopian fiction. These included troubled, unresolved endings, as well as an inclusion of a totalitarian government gone mad. By the 60s and 70s, the genre had developed into a paranoid sense of dystopian fear. Amongst itself, the growing ability of computers, while still at the time minimal, was still obviously growing quickly, and many thought that to tell stories about the way these computers would lead mankind into the future. So many films at the time felt it necessary to portray these worlds on film, like THX 1138 and Soylent Green. This, of course, leading us to the era that birthed Escape from New York. John Carpenter's sci-fi action-adventure that on its face seems rather unremarkable, and although one of the movies with the gun-toting action star on its poster, does, however, reveal itself to be slower, more melancholic film. The first of 2 films Carpenter made ridiculing the American government. Escape from New York was written originally in 1974, where Carpenter had subjects like Watergate and the Vietnam War in his mind, when writing his critique of the United States, and made the future include a government run with similar ideals as the current one at the time. Other than an original opening to the movie, that was eventually cut, there is essentially none of the outside world away from New York shown. This, whilst adding a claustrophobic sense to the audience, with the confines of the city, also abstracts the rest of the world, giving us little information on what it's actually like. Carpenter uses this to only give us information through the changes to what we know, and differences in characters to what we expect. In movies from the 80s and 90s, we expect a terrorist group to be Russian, or from some country that the United States was in good terms with at the time. Not to be Americans who, if correct, are fighting the breaking of constitutional liberties.
Tell this to the workers when they ask where your leader went. We, the soldiers of the National Liberation Front of America, in the name of the workers and all the oppressed of this imperialist country have struck a fatal blow to the racist police state.
We expect a president to be forgiving to all its people, convict or not. And we expect more of a golden boy from a World War veteran.
I'm not a fool, Pliskin.
Call me Snake.
The casting of Kurt Russell is specific because it works as a comment on what the world of this fictional 1997 has become. At the time, Russell was a Disney star, starring as an actor on the Disney Channel. He was the kid who kicked Elvis and It Happened at the World's Fair.
Go ahead, play it. Ah! It's a good one. It's a good one, boy.
And then later played him in a biopic. He was an all-American golden boy, so his role in Escape from New York was somewhat out of form. It implied that the world that now existed was so harsh it could twist the ideal of patriotism into such a nihilist as Snake Plissken. It suggested that the wars were now so harsh that Plissken, a decorated World War III veteran,
S.D. Pliskin. American, Lieutenant, Special Forces Unit Black Light. 2 Purple Hearts, Leningrad and Siberia. Youngest man to be decorated by the President.
would now, out of what seems to be spite, rob the Federal Reserve.
He robbed the Federal Reserve Depository. Life sentence, New York Maximum Security Penitentiary.
His final actions in the movie, Plisken swapping the tape with peacekeeping nuclear fusion plans on it with the cabbie's cassette of Bandstand Boogie, embarrassing the United States in an international meeting with the Soviet Union and China. This, however, is implied to stop peace talks between the 3 countries and implies the full cynicism of Plisken. He exists now solely to embarrass the government who he feels betrayed him in the war. He doesn't care for human life and hardship, but lives as an anti-American statement. He robs the Federal Reserve to attempt to cause the most damage to the United States. Part of the reason he rescues the president is to suggest the ridiculousness of the idea of a convict being the one to save the president. And he asks the president what he thinks of the people he lost, to only show, if only to himself, the hypocrisy of the current existing system.
Anything you want, you just name it.
Just a moment of your time.
3 minutes, sir.
Yes?
We did get you out. A lot of people died in the process. I just wondered how you felt about it.
Well, I want to thank them. This nation appreciates their sacrifice. Look, I'm on the air in 2.5 minutes.
Yes, sir.
This is primarily because the existing world shown is so dark that he feels there is nothing to save. This image of New York as an eternal prison suggests the breaking down of 2 American ideals. First, the loss of America being a place to start anew. New York being a symbol of that, with many immigrating there in the late 19th and early 20th century, and the Statue of Liberty a symbol of this, being the first thing people would see on boats over. But even that, as the poster shows, Lady Liberty's head torn off and left in the rubble, is no more. And second, the United States no longer believes in rehabilitation. Like its experiment with Alcatraz, it is built not to rehabilitate, merely to punish. It suggests the government's blossomed the belief in the goodwill of people, and preference to discard those it deems harmful to its emotionless regime. Hi, this is Luke. If you liked that video, please like and subscribe, and click the bell icon for notifications about new videos.